Well, welcome everyone to our review of our latest version that came out in December 2023. I am AJ Ootman. I'm familiar with quite a few of you. I am your customer success manager and your host for today. Well, the goal of this recent release is to give you finer controls and visibility for a faster workflow. We have a number of improvements in this release, but specifically they'll affect certifications, the UI, policies, patron portal, as well as improvements to staging, which I know a number of you started using in our July release. And today we're also going to hear from our lead developer, Lee Ares, about what to expect in the coming year. To start off today, I want to talk about our improvements to our resource type certifications module. Certifications allows operators to grant access to resource types that require some type of test or certification. The School of the Art Institute in Chicago partnered with us on making some improvements to this module. At SAIC, they typically grant access to gear via groups. However, within those groups or those classes, there's a number of items that require a test on proficiency. So they're giving certifications out to a number of different types of equipment. Because of the high volume of this need, they needed a way to not just give access to one resource type, but rather to a collection of resource types. Additionally, they needed finer controls with giving operators access to edit and to manage those certifications. Now we have what we're calling structured certifications. This is a huge value add for those of you that manage shops, maker spaces, engineering departments, or really any center that requires some test for proficiency. I am curious with the users that I have on the call, how many of you test in order to give certification to specific gear? So if you could just put a thumbs up in chat, if you have any type of test or proficiency exam for students to get access to your gear, just go ahead and put a thumbs up in chat if that use case is you. All right. Okay, I'm seeing a few thumbs up come up. I see Alex and Robert. Okay, great. A couple more coming in. All right. Well, I'm going to go into web checkout now and show the improvements to certifications. If I were giving a certification to just one student and one resource type, I could go to either the patron detail page, or I can go to the resource type detail page, which I'll do now. Under my find resource types, I'm going to type in my certified film cameras. And from this detail page, I'm going to select the certifications tab. Those of you that are using this module are probably familiar with this page where you can grant access. So I could add this certification grant to a specific user in order to use this camera. This is also importable. So some of you have been using importable sheets to grant access to a whole class that tests. Well, now we can grant access to a structured certification that'll not only give access to this camera, but to a collection of gear. I'm going to show you how easy it is to build this structured certification. I'll select Admin, Organization, and from my Organization detail page, I'm on the Certification tab. From here, I'll hit Add Certification, and then fill out this property sheet. I'll first add the unique ID of my certification, as well as the name of it. So in this certification, it's going to be for my cinematography students that are in my first section. And it'll grant them access to our cinematography equipment that's within our cinematography lab. I'll set my duration to 1 year because we require a test every year, so it'll just be active for a year. And then I'm going to add resource types that require this certification. So I'll hit the plus icon and just type in the name of my resource type. I also can use the find page to find equipment through my catalog or even add it in bulk. So I'm going to look for my AV carts and I'll also add my edit bays. Great, so I can add 2 at a time, or again, continue by simply typing in the name of my items. Once I've added this collection of resource types, I'll make it active and hit submit. Now that I've submitted it, it shows up under this certifications page, and I can see the name of it here under this list, and I'm going to go into it to grant access to users. So select that. This takes me to this certification detail page where I can see all of the resource types we already added. And of course, I could add more or remove some by hitting the trash can icon. But I'm going to go to the grants tab because I'm going to give access to this gear to all of the students in my cinematography section 1. So I'll hit add certification grant. And I could either add users 1 by 1, but I just want to add the whole class. So I'm going to select the find page icon. And I'm going to type in the name of my section under my search terms. So I'll start typing cinematography. Great, and this pulls up all of the students that are in my cinematography section 1. I'll just check the box at the top to add them all and hit confirm selected to add them all in bulk. I'll verify I'm just giving them access for the year, and I'll add a title just to help remind myself this is for cinematography section 1 and hit submit. Now I've granted all of these users that took a test on the same day access to this gear. All right, and again, it's access to this entire collection. So it really adds that benefit add to those of you that do require testing, and that test gives access to more than one resource type. And you can easily find this certification by going authorizations, find certifications, and you can see it within the find page right there. In addition to certification improvements, we've also made a number of UI improvements. I'm going to first show improvements to containers. So I'll select resources and I'm going to look for one of my kits. So I'll go to my Sony camera kit number 2. And I'm under the components tab. One of the improvements we've made to the UI here is how your list of components are ordered. It's now ordered lexicographically. It's a big word that essentially means alphabetically, but if you opened with numbers, it's just going to look for that very first character. This way, it's ordered in a logical ordering so that you can quickly find any of the components that are within your kits. Another UI improvement is I'm going to navigate to this resources resource type detail page. So I'll just select the Sony camera kits on the left-hand pane. And from this resource type detail page, I'm going to select its availability tab. Right? I can see that the Sony camera kit 2 is currently checked out because it's in yellow. One of the improvements is if I hover over it, I not only see the start and end time, but I now also see the user. So with a lot of the visibility improvements, we're just giving you more feedback so that you don't have to go digging for this information. It's right here on the screen. Another improvement is improvements to policies. So for those of you with the billing module, we've added a usage discount to help mimic what many rental houses in the industry use. To show that, I'm gonna hit this admin tab, then go to Checkout Center. From this Checkout Center detail page, I'll select the Billing tab, and I'm gonna scroll down to my usage fees section. Right now, you can see that we're charging a fee rate of $10 a day, and this is just a simple fee. Well, as part of the improvements to simple fee is we have this fee discount property. I can select it and select either 3 or 4-day week. I'm gonna select a 4-day week. This mimics what a lot of rental houses do, such as BuzzFeed and Vox, which are two of our clients, where in this example, if every day a student or staff member, whoever, gets charged $10, we're giving a discount where we're only charging them 4 days out of the week. So they may have the gear out for 7 days, but they're only getting a $40 charge. And that way, again, we're helping to mirror the policies of production houses, as I know that's a goal of many of you to get your students and staff members used to what they can expect in the industry. Another policy improvement we've made is under this allocations tab. And I'll scroll down through these policy settings to our minimum reservation lead time. Your minimum reservation lead time sets the amount of time between when you can create a reservation before you can go pick up that gear. Well, this improvement was partnered with us by AFTRS, which is the Australian Film, Television, and Radio School. AFTRS had a need where on their close days, oftentimes students would try to book the very next day, but they would start their booking on Fridays. So right before they close, they would create the booking in the afternoon and then would expect on Monday morning to come pick up this large reservation. Well, it wasn't enough time for operators to pack that reservation because they were away on Saturday, Sunday. So now, under minimum reservation lead time, if you select business days, you now have the option of adding a cutoff time. So in my example, I've listed a cutoff time at 11 a.m. What this means, if a student or any patron creates a reservation after 11 a.m. and we're going into a business day, they cannot then book that equipment or book a pickup on the next open day. So in this example, I passed 11 a.m. So the earliest I could book would be Tuesday. At my center, I'm closed tomorrow, Saturday, and Sunday. So let's just see this policy in action. I'm gonna try to reserve this gear the morning of Monday, and let's see what will happen. So I'm gonna go into Patron Portal. I'll select the reserve icon. All right. And I'm gonna set that start time for this Monday, which is our next open day. And I'm gonna try and come in at 9:30 in the morning. And we'll go until Wednesday at 9. I'll select my project building blocks, agree to my terms, and now I'm going to add my equipment. Gonna add a Pentax film camera by selecting the plus icon. And now I'll scroll to the top. At the top of this reservation page, I see an alert that the reservation has errors. If I click the dropdown, it says minimum reservation lead time. And when I expand it, it says that the Pentax camera must be reserved by 11 a.m. one business day in advance. So again, we're seeing this policy setting in action because I'm closed tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday. The earliest I can now book since I've gone past 11 a.m. is Tuesday. So I'll move my pickup to Tuesday, and now it's ready to save. I can click the save icon to save this reservation. In addition to that improvement in policy settings, for those of you that are using our green lighting module, we've made improvements to when students can book to a project. To show this, I'm going to go into my green lighting module. In this module, you can create projects that allow you to plan, gather, and manage all within WebCheckout. I'm going to select this project, Smart and Fresh, and verify its start and end time. So as you can see, my start time is right now January 30th and going until February 10th. By setting the start and end time, students must create their reservations within this window of time. So their start and end time must fall within these date parameters. Let's see this in action. I'm going to go back to Patron Portal. I'll hit the reserve button. And I'm going to attempt to reserve gear for this project later in February. So I'm going to try to reserve it for February 12th to February 15. I'll save those. I'm selecting that same project, Smart and Fresh. I'll agree to my terms and conditions. And then I'll select my contents book icon to look for my items. All right, I'm looking for my Sony camera bundle. I'll hit the plus icon to add it. And now it added all of those bundled items. If I scroll to the top, I do see reservation has errors. I see the alert allocation after project end date. So I know right away I've got to adjust this start and end time. So I'm going to move it back to February 5th to the 8th to be within the project's bookable time frame. Great, and now it changes to green. It's ready to save. I no longer have an issue with the project time parameters. Before I save this, I am going to add one more item that I just remembered to add. So I'm going to hit the book icon again, and I'm going to look for my camera dollies. Once I'm on this camera dolly detail page, you'll notice that camera dolly 3, as well as all of these, have this calendar icon. If I were to click that calendar icon, I can now see when this item is checked out for the month. So I can see all of the days that are in yellow are days that this is currently checked out. Or I can see a week view. So I can see all the days of the week, and the time we're open is in white, when we're closed is in gray. Or I can see a day of view. This improvement was part of our Rock the Vote campaign, where we asked users what new feature they would like to see. And many of you that are on the call voted in our community site, and this was the winner of that vote. So as of this release, it is now available. All right, and I'll add that camera dolly. Great. So now that I've added my contents, I'll go to the top and save this reservation. I've saved the reservation, and I'm going to switch gears and go back to the operator view of Web Checkout, because as an operator, I want to process this reservation. And while I'm processing it, I'm going to showcase improvements to a very new feature that came out in July 2023, and that is staging. So I'll select the CKID that we just reserved, and I'm going to stage it. Now, what is staging? Staging is essentially pre-packing your gear, and staging gives you the ability to track that pre-packing. This feature was originally created in partnership with the School of Visual Art in New York. SVA had the challenge where they pre-pack a lot of gear. And what'll happen is if they're packing an order and say the operator gets distracted, maybe someone comes into the center that needs assistance, or they have to go on lunch break or teach a class, right? And they come back to packing their order, it was sometimes difficult to figure out exactly where they left off. Well, now with staging, we've solved that. I can see that this reservation is in the stage of unstaged. So if I scroll down, I'll hit the stage reservation button and it opens the staging modal where I can scan in barcodes in this barcode input field. And once I scan them in, they get added to this result with the status of how much of this reservation has been staged. At the bottom of the modal, I can see it's been staged with an icon that looks like a packed cart to show that it's been staged. If I need to unstage it for any reason, I can hit the red reverse arrow to unstage it. Additionally, for any items that are not reserved by type, but they're reserved by ID, such as this camera dolly 3 or this extension cord, you'll notice a little, it looks like an operator with a push cart. This is our manual stage icon. So you don't have to scan in a barcode because these already have an ID assigned. I can simply click the manual stage button and it adds it to my stage results. Right. I'll go ahead and scan in another barcode. Great. And now that boosts it to 50% complete. Well, let's imagine that a professor comes in and has a number of questions about our workflow as well as our policies to assist them in their class. I'm going to step away and I go talk to the professor. The conversation goes a bit longer than I expected, and I come back about an hour later. Well, fortunately with staging, I can see right where I left off, even from the front page. You can add result columns to your front page that show the staging status as well as the overall, staging progress as well as the overall status. So I can see that this is 50% staged, so I have, half the order to finish out. I'll go into that CKID to finish out staging this order. I'll hit stage reservation, right? And I'll go ahead and scan in my barcodes. All right. Now, when I stage these barcodes, you'll notice that the feedback looks a little different. There's now this question icon with what looks like a return arrow. When I click on the question icon, it tells me that this barcode matches a resource that is currently checked out. This is part of the staging improvement in that SVA noticed with many of their larger orders, sometimes a student would return one or two items, but their operator didn't properly check it back in because the rest of the order was out. They, forgot to, again, properly check it back in. Well, now as you're staging, you can return items that are technically back in your center while staging at the same time. And an improvement in our current version is you'll notice that two of these need to be returned. I can click this return arrow at the top and I can return both of these items and scan them both in. So it just wants to verify that I'm wanting to return and rescan. I'll hit yes, and it adds both of them to my scan results. So a big win to this modal is now you can do that in bulk. I'll scan in my last item. Oh, looks like I scanned that in too quickly. All right, there we go. It adds that result. And now all 100% of this reservation has been pre-packed. It's now ready for my student to come pick it up. Right. Well, at this time, that does conclude our newest features that have come out in our December release. Now, please note that is not the full list of features, but it's a highlight of the most significant ones. However, at this time, I do want to turn over the time to our lead developer, Lee Erez, who will talk a little about what you can expect to see in the coming years. So Lee, thank you so much for joining us, and feel free to take it away.
Hello, thanks, AJ. I appreciate it. Yeah, so we're kind of excited about the next release that's coming out. The big exciting feature, the one that I'm most excited about myself, is our new requests and turndowns feature. Requests are a new mechanism in the shopping cart to mark an item as something that a student or a patron would like to have for their allocation, but it doesn't actually reserve it. So it doesn't block anybody else from reserving an item. This can be spun out. So you as an administrator might decide that you want to keep track of the things that people are requesting for purposes of creating or managing waiting lists. Or if something has come back and you see that there are other people that wanted it for their allocation, maybe they've already picked their allocation up, but now they've got this item has come available that they might want. You do have the mechanism to find that and to notify people. Another advantage of requests is its relationship to turndowns. So turndowns, for those who don't know, are a way to track those items that you would like to have been able to give to a student, but due to inventory or some other constraint, you were unable to. This is a great tool for, especially for budgetary planning for your next year, figuring out if you've got a limited. I assume some of you, probably a small proportion of you, have a limited budget to spend and can't just buy anything you want. So this would give you the tools that you need to get some idea of where that spend is best made. Now, this is a feature we've had in the application for ages, but historically, the requirement has been on the operator to click a button saying that I would like to have added this, but I couldn't. So the operator has to go in and click the turn down. And I think it's probably fair to say that you're busy and harried students don't necessarily always remember to do that. So by allowing the addition of requests, requests that have not been satisfied, but also which you have not denied or turned down, or I'm sorry, which you have not denied, meaning under no circumstances would I give you, 6 red cameras. You can only have one. Those that were not denied will automatically become turndowns. So the student, especially the student and patron portal, is incented to put these things that they'd like to have in there. So the gathering of that information is is better automated, and the incentive for getting that information into the system is put on the right person, the student themselves, rather than the operator, who is probably inclined to just forget about it and move on. Going back to, I'm going to take my bullet points out of order. Going back to AJ's discussion of, I'm sorry, I see that Jake, you have asked what the anticipated release for this feature, these features are. We are currently, and again, we always want to be a little careful when we talk about release dates, but we're currently anticipating a June release for these features that I'm talking about today. Going back to staging, AJ was talking about that scenario where you discover that something that you've actually got in hand was not properly scanned back by your operator, and so staging gives you the opportunity to both return that and stage it to the allocation that you're currently dealing with. An interesting observation about staging is that staging doesn't require that you lock the allocation. So you can have multiple students, multiple operators working on staging and allocation simultaneously. Unlike an edit, where if somebody has put that allocation into edit mode, basically other people can't touch it until their work is done and they've confirmed their changes. So another scenario that pops up that we've heard back from our customers on is in the staging scenario, you've got an item, say you've got a collection of items, 30 items that are just, these always go from this class to this class, or from this patron to this patron, and perhaps you created the allocation and you left one of them out initially. So one of the items on your allocation was no longer, or didn't make it into the next allocation. Currently, in the current version, you would have to lock the allocation for editing, go in, add that item, confirm the reservation, get back out of it, and go back into staging. Now that can be disruptive if if you're staging particularly large orders. So in the next release, we're going to add the ability under certain circumstances to add entirely new items to an allocation while you're staging it. There are limits around that. So anything that requires an override or that might have scheduling concerns, it's going to refuse to put in that way. You are going to have to go back to edit and resolve any of those issues. But it should help in those instances where an item was left out, or the same set of functionality is mimicked in our scan for pickup scenario. So perhaps while you are working through an allocation scanning for pickup with a student in front of you, they ask to add a single item. You can just now grab that off the shelf, scan it in as part of scan for pickup, and it's added to the allocation again, as long as there are no issues with adding that item to the allocation. A third, I think, kind of exciting feature, many of our customers have said that they would like to be able to present to the general public, not just their registered patrons, but to all patrons or all potential patrons, some view into their catalog, some view into their resources. Say, for universities, you might want to make some of this information available to prospective students, for example, so they can see what the benefits of the program would be. Or we've added a new feature, or we are in the process of adding a new feature in this year that will allow you by Checkout Center to enable an unauthenticated view of the Checkout Center's catalog. So it's the same catalog you would see in Patron Portal, but you can get to it simply by knowing the name of the Checkout Center. You can go and see this. We're hoping that will be an exciting feature for people to be able to advertise their services to people who aren't necessarily their patrons yet. Pardon me. Some of our customers have pointed out that they will check an allocation out to a particular student, and at something may happen. For example, that student, I don't know, student gets sick, or some other concern that causes that student to no longer be the student responsible for the collection of resources. Other instances are, for example, an instructor actually creates the reservation, performs the checkout, but then transfers all of that equipment to their student. We now have the ability for properly authorized operators, and nobody gets this by default, so you get to decide if you want to turn this on, to go into a current checkout and to change the patron on the allocation. So if the professor is the one that actually checked it out and you want to change that to a specific student, then you have the ability to do that. That would also, in theory, allow you for group-based or project-based, I'm sorry, checkouts where you've got multiple people who are potentially responsible for items in the project. You can shift that responsible patron to a different person. And the last thing that we're working on, and we're always working on, is our performance. We think that we have found a couple of places where we might actually be able to once again increase the performance of our scheduler. Performance is always a scary thing to make any promises about, but I want you all to know that we do understand that for large allocations, some of these particularly complex scheduling operations take some time to complete. So we're always on the lookout for ways to improve that performance, and knock wood, I think we're going to see some good performance increases in the next version as well. So AJ, that's what I've got for 2024. I'm going to pass it back to you.
That is fantastically. I know I've heard from clients as well as myself. We're really excited for requests as well as all of the features you've talked about. So thank you so much for sharing. And as Lee mentioned, just look for news on that. If you have not joined our users list, we do try to be good about not over emailing, but we'll make you aware when new versions are out. I also want to talk about, as you're planning for the new year, thinking about professional service hours. In 2023, a number of you did use professional service hours. Myself, as well as Brittany and other members from our team, worked with a number of you on them. And the main goal of professional service hours is to help you achieve any new goals you have for your center, or if there's any trouble spots you're encountering, to help iron those out to make your life easier. Some of the key ways that the clients I worked with used professional services this past year was training new admins. So either a new hire would come, or existing admins just didn't fully understand all of the potential workflows that web checkout has, and we were able to train them on a new workflow in order to save them time. Some other key ways that people use professional service hours was new release deep dives. So what I did today was just a high level summary of some of the new features, but what can happen with a deep dive is you can have a professional services admin, train you on a call and walk you through every single new feature, make sure you're comfortable, and of course, troubleshoot anything else that's come up. We also, this past year, did a lot of data cleanup. So for those of you that have been with Web Checkout for a while, you may have a center that needs to move out some old gear or reorganize your resource type structure. And you can have a dedicated professional service admin walk you through reorganizing that data. So that was how a lot of people used it last year. In the coming year, I just want everyone in the call to think about some potential areas to grow. Some of those might be if you have Patron Portal and it's not branded. Earlier in the call, when I showcased Patron Portal, you may have seen that it was orange and teal. That's because I was using a branded Patron Portal. Branding can give your institution colors as well as your logo on Patron Portal to give it a more professional look, as well as so that it's consistent with the rest of your online platforms. Also, you'll see on screen an example of email template branding. I know I've worked with a few of you to add banners to your email templates. We can now add more than that. You can add photos, banners, hyperlinks to terms and conditions. You can reorganize your resource type list. You can add signatures. So there's a lot we can add to really make your email templates professional. And also, another thing to consider is student worker training. A lot of my clients will hire a handful of student workers at the start of every semester. Now, start of semester, from what we found, is often your busiest time of year. So if we can take one of those time blocks off of your plate and train your workers for you, that's another way that professional services can help meet your needs, as well as numerous offerings that we have. So if you are curious about that, please reach out. And also, if you're at NAB this year, which is the National Association for Broadcasters, it's going to be in Las Vegas in April. We're going to be in the middle of Central Hall this year, so we'll have a little better location. I know last year we were able to say hi to a number of you. I was able to get to know you a little better in person. So if you happen to be at NAB, please don't be shy. Come say hi. We would love to get to know you a bit better. All right, and as mentioned, if you are interested in some of those professional services or just have some, goals for the year that you think Web Checkout could maybe solve, please reach out to services@webcheckout.net. And of course, to take advantage of all of these great features, reach out to support@webcheckout.net to schedule your upgrade. I do want to now open up the floor for questions. I know a few have come into chat. So one of my co-moderators, Brittany, could you just let me know what are some of the top questions that have come into chat?
Even though the chat's been pretty active, we don't actually have very many questions from the content today in the chat. So I would recommend folks unmute themselves if they have questions or use that chat to go ahead and ask those questions.
If I may, I do see that Don had a use case about the requests and turndowns. And Don, the use case that you have there, that's a great way to use requests. I think Lee unfortunately had to jump off, but I do believe you can you'll be able to make it a request so that you can prioritize and say if it's a personal use, that request will just be a request until it becomes available, but others will have priorities. But that's exactly a very clear use case for the benefits of requests.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeannie, and thank you, Dawn, for that question. All right, it looks like changing patrons will be helpful. Awesome. Yep, that's one of the things I'm excited for. All right. Adri, I see your question in chat. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm just gonna know, I'll be reaching out to you regarding professional services. So that's a great question.
Love it. Thank you, AJ.
Absolutely. Are the lists coming back into patron portal? I see from Mariana, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Lists. Mariana, could you just let me know a little more when you say lists, what you're referring to?
Hi, yes, I was referring to the list where the users can save sort of like the list of equipment that that is different than the history before in the version that we used to have before. The patrons used to be able to have sort of like curated list of equipment that then they could combine into a reservation.
Gotcha. So like if they had a saved list, they could quickly go back to that save feature. Yeah, that's a great question. Brittany or Jeannie, do you mind just jumping in? Do you know if
So
there is a way to get that same saved list?
currently in patron portal, there is not a way to do saved lists, but I have submitted that feedback to the team for our December version.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brittany. And I see also in chat, will there be a feature for the calendar to be more friendly to be able to close edit quickly without the need to add a new schedule? Oh, gotcha. I think Sanisa, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Sanisa, I'm not quite sure which version you are on, but I do just want to note, so I'd have to look to see what version you're on. I believe you're talking about our calendar here. In some previous versions, you would have to set the overall, so the start and end date or the schedule separate from your hours of operation. That now can just be done in one modal. I can hit create new schedule or click on an existing schedule, add my start and end date and the hours just in one modal. So I think that's what you're referring to. If so, in our current versions, we have improved that.
If I don't know if you can hear me, if you don't mind me unmuting myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just, let's say, for example, that we have an emergency at the office and we need to close just for today.
Mhm.
So we're looking for as a quick double click close today without having to change a lot, because I don't see a way to do that right now.
Sure, I gotcha. Are you familiar with adding a holiday schedule?
Yes.
So,
Is that,
yeah,
is that the way it has to be done?
yeah, so what I would do if I was closing today is I would just put, closed for whatever that reason is. Click is a holiday schedule, set today's date, right? And then whatever that time block is, so if we're closed the full day, I would set that, right? And then just set my closed hours and hit submit. So it is just a couple extra clicks, right? Than just a quick button, but not too many. And for now, that would be the workflow I'd recommend. Okay. Great question. Savannah asked about the catalog. Gotcha. So that, Savannah, thank you so much. We will put that feedback in. We always love getting feedback from users, so we'll place that in. Great. All right. And then Brittany, are you seeing any other just questions on the new features?
So it looks like Oh, looks like our chat's pretty active. It looks like there's a question about, right, future behavior about resource types. So whether it be an addition to resource types where we can be more granular with return time for individual resource types and not the global or the checkout center settings. So
I
sending, yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. So Gregory, I believe kind of you're referring to like a separate calendar for each resource type. Do I understand that correctly?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Hi. Basically, yeah, so we sort of provide equipment that can be used throughout the entire university, as well as equipment that can be that's specific to classrooms. So we were wondering if it's possible where we could have us tweak it where, let's say a projector, and that's not sort of critical for our larger purpose, like that email reminder could go out after 4 hours, but for, let's say, a lavalier that's like very dependent for that classroom to be used next, that could trigger after an hour.
Gotcha. And you're talking specifically, yeah, about email settings.
Yeah, that's pretty much, yeah, that's how it is, because like if reservation goes, so for one of our checkout centers, we have it set for 4 hours for all the equipment. And then a different checkout center, we have everything set for 1 hour. I was wondering if there's a way that could sort of, be more granular based on resource type can override a specific, like the larger checkout center settings.
Gotcha. Yeah, I hear you. I know we have some feedback where users have requested essentially adding calendars where you could add this type of calendar to a resource type. That presently doesn't exist. That presently is just a checkout center wide setting. But I do appreciate that. We will add that to our feedback today. So thank you so much. And I'm just noting that on my notes. All right, any other questions? I think Ellen has a question.
And we are following up with Ellen. There is a
Okay.
question about certifications, though, that I want to make sure we answer that says, is the certification feature something that can be overridden by operator roles?
Yeah, that's such a great question. Thank you, Eric, for that. Absolutely. So if I go to my operator info page and scroll down, just going to type in certification so I can find this faster. There we go. So we actually have multiple settings now for certification. So that's where I just briefly mentioned you can get a bit more granular with your certification. So you can give operators the ability to grant and edit certifications with the grant certifications, revoke certifications that allows them to pull a certification. And then we also have manage certifications, which allows them to essentially do both. So they can create new certifications, edit them, as well as revoke them. So 3 operator capabilities: grant, revoke, and manage.
And they can be overwritten by an operator. So if a patron walks to the checkout center and they don't have certifications for that resource type, absolutely an operator with the override capability can continue and provide that equipment to that student, no problem.
Thank you, Jeannie, for the clarification. I went on a bit of a bunny trail. Thank you.
All good.
All right, great question. All right, and it looks like Sam from DePaul. Okay, so asking, is staging the only way that multiple people can jointly add or assign items to the same allocation? Great. So Sam is referring to part of the improvement to staging is you can have 2 operators logged into 2 separate computers and they can be staging at the same time, which is a big value add, particularly for those of you that have, large enough orders that you typically have multiple operators working on it. I believe that functionality is just for staging, but I do just want to ask Jeannie, do you happen to know if that would be for, assigning IDs in an allocation? I believe it is just for staging.
Sorry, I was popping up a little message here, but joint workers, sorry, staging the only way that multiple people can jointly add items is yes, that is correct. Staging is currently the only one where we can have multiple collaborators, yes.
Great question. Thank you so much, Sam, and thank you, Jeannie, for that input. All right. So I see from Robert, just asking if it would be possible to have a checklist of things. So Robert, if I understand this correctly, if you're on an allocation, so for example, if I go back into my example allocation and I hit stage, the list is essentially here. So right now, these are all staged, but everything that's part of that reservation will show. And if I unstage one of these items, you'll see under the pink section that says not staged yet, that list of your items that still have to be staged. Okay, so you'll have that list right within the modal. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for your questions. We do really appreciate your time. I'll just pop back on screen all of those links so that they're available. Oops.
I did want to address, there was a couple people asking about the public catalog view that will be in a feature improvement to Patron Portal. So all of you that have Patron Portal, you'll see this as a value add with the June release. And then Jake, your question about, staging, that's included with WebCheckout. So all of you have access to staging if you're in the June or December 2023 release. That's available now.
That's
And
right.
that's it.
That's right. Thank you so much, Jeannie. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you later.